Welcome back, taking over from Vikram as we continue our special focus on the budget. Let's just quickly run you through now some of the top 5 big announcements of this election budget, which is of course the 75,000 crore cash income support to farmers, 6,000 rupees per year. So that was the first big one. And then of course the first payout is going to start of 2,000 rupees to 12 crore farmers by March end. So that's before the elections. And then zero income tax proposed for those earning up to 5 lakhs. Standard deduction has been hiked by 10,000 rupees. Those are some of the big announcements. Let's quickly check to see if there are any more. 60,000 crores for rural job guarantee scheme Narega, up from 55,000 crores in the current year. And finally, the mega pension plan for the unorganized sector with income up to 15,000 rupees a month. Okay, so has this budget then set the stage for 2019? We are also joined by Milind Deora of the Congress Party. He's joining us from Mumbai, and of course Chandan Mitra is here with us of Trinamool, Deshratan Nigam, who's an RSS supporter, and Ajay Veer Jakar, chairman of the Bharat Krishak Samaj, and
strap is on the camera front.
Farm leader. Milind Deora, if I can just start with you and just ask you that Rahul Gandhi has tweeted in response to the announcement by the government about this 6,000 rupee income transfer. He says, "Dear Nomo," this is what he's calling him these days, "Nomo, 5 years of your incompetence and arrogance has destroyed the lives of our farmers. Giving them 17 rupees a day is an insult to everything they stand and work for." But the fact is, Milind Deora, that this is just competitive populism by both parties. You promised some kind of basic minimum income to all Indians. They've promised an income support to farmers. What would your problem be with it?
Firstly, I believe that, if you listen to the budget speech from start to finish, it sounded more like a election manifesto release speech than a budget speech. It was lofty promises that, the film industry will employ so many people, the tourism sector can employ so many people, we love the farmers, we love the armed forces. The bottom line is, this is a government and this is a party that's in power for the last 5 years.
Right.
They came in with great hopes, great expectations. They were the first government in 3 decades to have a absolute majority.
Right.
And a lot was expected from them. And I believe they also had great tailwinds in the sense that they had low oil prices, which allowed them to reduce our fiscal deficit. It allowed them to reduce inflation considerably.
Sure.
They had the RBI, which obviously toed the line with their policy and reduced interest rates to a large extent.
Milind, coming to my question.
In spite of that, unfortunately, the economy is growing, but there are serious concerns.
But coming to my question about Rahul Gandhi's tweet, running down the government's income support to farmers. Now, as I said, listen, you're in politics. You understand that, any vote on account, any interim budget will bound to have a political flavor. But I'm saying, what's the critique here? What's wrong with saying we are providing an additional support of 6,000 rupees to farmers, in addition to, all the other subsidies and schemes that they get? What's wrong with that?
What's wrong with that is that the agrarian sector is a large component of our country's GDP.
Right.
If we fix the agrarian distress in our country, we can get a major boost in our GDP. If we fix the agrarian distress, we can reduce problems like urbanization, where people are leaving rural areas, coming to cities in search of jobs. That in fact exacerbates the employment crisis.
But that's
the fact is that there are thousands of people all over the country in every state who are committing suicide.
But that's what they say that they're fixing by giving them additional income.
Well, 6,000 rupees per year in today's day and age, providing 6,000 rupees of income support to a farmer who is about to commit suicide, who is under serious distress in states where there has been drought, where crops have failed, are you telling me 6,000 rupees per annum, which is around 500 rupees per month, is enough to fix their problems, to prevent them from committing suicide, to reduce agrarian distress?
Okay,
it's a joke, right?
Let me ask.
So,
let me take that to Deshratan Nigam.
Our point is, it's not a question of a dole or it's not a question of a sop. I think we believe that fixing the agrarian crisis is of utmost importance.
Okay,
unfortunately, my point I'm making is
I'm just breaking in for 1 second
and allocate more funds.
Milind, I'm just breaking in for 1 second because Arun Jaitley
policies in the last few years.
Okay, just give me 1 second. I'm just breaking in because Arun Jaitley is speaking to ANI. Let's just listen.
Subsidy and a support, a very large number of them are within Ayushman Bharat, so free health care. Then you have a number of them who get the Manrega benefit, which used to be 28,000 crores during UPA, which is now 60,000 crores. Right to food, cheap ration, 1,90,000 crores. Now, over and above all this, the center says that when you buy your inputs, fertilizer, seeds, etc., I'll give you an initial financial support. Loan waivers are never a solution to the farm sector problem in the long run. And income support still is. We first announced that the farmer will get input cost plus 50%. Many get it, but some, the markets don't give them 50%. So you are giving them this additional support of 6,000. And then you have a federal structure, you have state governments. If Telangana can announce, if Odisha can announce, I'm sure the other state governments can also announce. So please don't shed crocodile tears today for the farmers. If you also, the opposition also has several governments, let them announce similar schemes. I'm sure the other governments within their fiscal space will also consider this. And therefore you can top it up. And it's not that as though this is the sole prerogative or the responsibility of the center. We are in a cooperative federalism. Both center and states must cooperate. This is a huge amount that we are doing. And we are now, as against a one-time loan waiver of 52,000 crores, which was partly eaten into by traders and businessmen, this is 75,000 crores in the first year itself. I'm sure it will expand in future years.
Right. This kind of a support scheme for the farmers, does the government actually now agree that there is a crisis in the agriculture sector?
Well, I think crisis is overstating it. The Indian farmer is really the producer of our food. His productivity levels have hugely improved. And therefore, in the last few decades, we've seen shortages becoming into surpluses. 4 years ago, pulses were in shortage. He's now producing it in surpluses, so the prices go. Now, he gets hit because he's producing more, that the cost goes down. And therefore, world over, the United States is subsidizing its farmers. The European Union is subsidizing their farmer. So everywhere you maintain a balance between food prices and subsidizing the farmer, so the farmer gets an incentive for producing something. I think our farm sector still needs support, and I'm quite sure if the center and the states come together with these kind of programs, rather than mere myopic slogans, which really will not give a long-term sustenance to the farmer, it can certainly achieve a lot more.
Now, not many Indians, like the citizens, have applauded this budget, the interim budget. They say it's a budget for everyone. It is for the farmers, it's for the middle class. But the opposition and the critics again say this is something to woo the voters. It's that Brahmastra that the BJP is using.
I think, let's be very clear. In the 2009 interim budget, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, not even in the interim budget, but while replying to it, announced a stimulus package, where he reduced excise duties 2% across the board. Well, the same argument was available then. In 2014, Mr. Chidambaram, on a number of products, including engineering products, automobiles, gave a duty rebate. The same argument can be taken now. Well, budgets are an essential part of any parliamentary democracy. So are elections. And if good policies of the government and the kind of fiscal space that we have created enables us to help the middle class. And mind you, India's middle class is being very vastly strengthened. I recently went through a study. In 2018, we had 2005, I'm sorry, we had a 18% middle class. In 2015, it was 29%. In 2025, it's projected to be 44%. So within a generation, you will see a large majority of Indians graduating into the middle class. And if UPA inflicted a 10% inflation on them, which we've brought down, obviously the taxpayer also, his real value of money has declined, and therefore exempting the smaller taxpayer, and mind you, his ability to spend more means a boost to the economy. What we give him by way of a direct tax benefit also comes back by way of indirect taxes, because the purchasing power of India's middle class is improved.
Right. With such big ticket announcements, there must be a sizable impact on the income of the government. How would you possibly contain fiscal deficit at 3.4%?
Well, if you look up governments from independence onwards, and more particularly after the post-reform, no government, and I say this without fear of contradiction, has had a better record of fiscal prudence than we have. Our fiscal deficit, we inherited about 4.5, 4.6%, is down to 3.4. We had targeted 3.3, but because of this last minute 20,000 adjustment because of the farm expenditure, we've had to make a 0.1 compromise. Our current account deficits have been brought under control, inflation is under control, and therefore if you see, our fiscal record speaks for itself. Because of all the anti-black money measures that we took, because of the entire direct and indirect tax departments being put online, because of the fact that we've now, after demonetization, after GST, the average we have been growing in our tax collections every year in the last 5 years has been in the range of 15 to 18% a year. Now, if my revenues are going up 15 to 18%, if my tax base is close to doubling in a 5-year period, surely the people who pay taxes are entitled to see the benefit of those taxes. And the benefit of the taxes is a growing economy, a booming economy, and on top of that, people getting tax rebates and people getting a better quality of life, a better infrastructure. So when we took over, the budget size used to be 5 years ago in the range of 14 lakh crores. Now, Piyush Goyal has today announced next year's budget size to be over 27 lakh crores. So the size of the budget itself has expanded almost a little less than doubling.
Right. With the latest media report on the NSSO data suggesting unemployment at record high, what's happening with the jobs, sir?
Well, I don't think that's a report. That's a draft which has not been approved. Now, let me first use this opportunity to meet two disinformations which have been given. The first, jobs. If 7.5% is the average real GDP growth and inflation is 4.5%, at the moment it's 2.19, then our nominal growth, adding the two, is about 11.5 to 12%. If the economy is growing over the last 5 years by a 12% nominal growth, and if you compound it annually, the size itself is expanding very largely, it would be an economic absurdity to say that such large nominal growth, the highest anywhere in the world, doesn't lead to creation of jobs. That can happen only in one eventuality, that your productivity levels go up to such an extent that even a bigger economy doesn't grow jobs. That is to say, that here you had, take any industry, take your industry, a newspaper. It took us 500 employees to bring out a newspaper. Today it takes us 50. Even though our circulations have doubled, the jobs have come down. But have our productivity levels gone up to that level? Obviously the answer is no. There are newer areas of economy which are expanding. And also remember, if no job creation takes place, then there is social unrest. This has been a peace period as far as social issues have been concerned, and no major social agitation has been witnessed in the last 5 years. So I completely refute this argument that a 12% nominal growth on an average over 5 years will not lead to creation of jobs. The second argument Well, how did the GDP improve even after demonetization? Well, there were no settled models of demonetization anywhere in the world. And therefore, people were making off-the-cuff statements. Oh, it will lead to a 2% reduction in GDP. Oh, it may lead to a negative growth, etc. And our mindsets were all getting constrained by them. But what did demonetization eventually involve? People were earlier transacting substantially in cash. You buy goods in cash. The trader goes to the manufacturer or the wholesaler and buys in cash. The manufacturer buys his raw material in cash. And all this transaction chain went unrecorded. When all of them were compelled to deposit their money, 86% of India's currency into the banking system, and now you have to give your credit card, now you have to have more recordable kind of transactions. Except for the initial shock for a quarter or so, or maybe two, more recordable transactions, more digitization really adds to a larger economy. And therefore, the GDP had to go up. And my final response to this is, GDP estimates are estimates. Tax collection is real. If in 2016-17 and 2017-18, the tax collection was going up between 15 to 18% a year, that was real tax collection. So there was economic activity happening. You don't have a 15 or an 18% taxation growth without a corresponding expansion of the economy, which is an expansion of the GDP. Therefore, let's not get into these fictional arguments that GDP doesn't grow if monies are deposited into the banks. My assertion is absolutely to the contrary.
All right. So that was Arun Jaitley there from New York being interviewed by ANI. And, this is actually quite reassuring to see that the finance minister seems to be in reasonable health. He seems to have recovered from that
that is
health setback.
The health setback is a very welcome thing.
Yeah.
But most of his arguments are probably not.
Of course. Having got the courtesies out of the way,
yes,
let's straight away, take him on. Okay, so Chandan Mitra and also Mohammad Salim is joining us from I believe from Kolkata as well. But Chandan Mitra, do you want to then respond to what he said about the fact that, he made a number of different assertions about the budget. So do you want to, do you want to respond?
I just want to say that, the government sometimes behaves in an ostrich-like manner. And many of the arguments that were given were those of an ostrich. Mr. Jaitley is a very dear friend of mine, so I don't want to hurt him in any way. But I am telling you that the tax collections that he claims have gone up in a significant way is as a result of tax terrorism. And you ask any businessman today, medium, small, large,
right?
They are really being coerced into paying taxes, even if they cannot afford it.
Right.
So very often taxes are being paid with borrowed money,
right?
Which does not help the economy to grow. You look at the number of factories and businesses that are shut down or have slowed down.
Right.
So how does it help the economy in the long run?
No, also, by the way, just to tell you that we've done a lot of fact checking on these claims about an increase in tax collection. And actually, if you look at it, the percentage growth year on year has been pretty organic. There's been no huge spike in tax collection after the note ban. So the idea that there's a note ban surge is factually not true. So you can cherry pick the increase in individual years and claim that there's a surge, but actually that surge is not borne out by facts. But let me just ask you, Deshrata Nigam, a point that Milan Deora was making before we had to cut him off, and which Mr. Jaitley didn't address, partly because he wasn't asked this, that why are you bringing in this scheme, this 75,000 crore SOP, in the death overs of your government? If you really had such a concern for farmers, if you were so aware of the fact that farmers are in pain, why do it now other than simply to win elections? Isn't it a completely cynical move?
No, certainly not. Now, when this government came in power, the state of treasury was pathetic. The Prime Minister, after 3 years, said, I did not say so at that point of time, but if I had said so, probably there would have been a chaos in India. That's Prime Minister is on record. So demonetization, apart from black money and everything, was also a move to bring money into the system. The money got into the system and the government started working. There were increase in the tax collection from 6 lakh, 5 point some lakh odd crores to about 12 lakh crores now. This money started.
But that, as I just mentioned, is not unusual.
No,
the growth in tax collections was completely organic and par for the course.
So that's what I'm saying. From 2014, it is almost doubled now. Doubled. Please remember, it has not happened in 4 years. Look at the data in the past.
We can look at the data in the past, and I can tell you individual years in the past where the growth in tax collection has been high.
Therefore,
so let's not get into that.
The point I was making.
But you're making a point. You're saying that the government. Are you trying to argue that the government was effectively broke for all these years and only now has the money to hand it out? Because that's a very strange argument to make.
No, that's
this
what
government actually had a windfall because of low oil prices. It's the actual reverse.
Let me tell
you, this government came in with a windfall.
The Prime Minister went on record saying so after 3 years. What was the state of economy when he inherited the post?
But and you know, he can say that. He never produced any evidence to back it up.
It is for all you to see. What was the economic growth rate? What was the fiscal deficit at that point of time? Those are the parameters that will give you enough indication.
Okay,
very high inflation of 11%.
Okay,
those are the indicators.
No,
those are the indicators. Now the money started coming in, and therefore they've started bringing Ayushman Bharat and so many other schemes.
In the last Mohammad Salim,
why not?
In the last few weeks, perhaps, of this government, Mohammad Salim.
Yes, last few weeks, as rightly pointed out, is a late realization. For 5 years, inside Parliament, outside Parliament, the farmers' organizations, the workers' organizations, they were saying about the crisis. The government was on a denial mode. It's another matter that resource was not there, that's why now they are giving. But when you tell me the Prime Minister or the Finance Minister have addressed the issue of employment, the issue of farmers' crisis, and the agrarian crisis, all this time it was Achhe Din. And now all of a sudden you are giving 6,000 rupees per family.
Right.
All account is there done. The question is, this is an admission that you are failure. You said you are going to double the income of the farmers. You have already guaranteed the minimum support price, and now this was a hoax. You are admitting, but it's too late. What the farmers will do now? Even for non-formal sectors, Srinivasan, you know better than me that how this non-formal sector workers have suffered this demonetization. And now this job, even if they are compelled to do, they are underpaid, and it's an informal and totally unsecured.
Right.
So there you are saying if you work for 60 years, you contribute for 30 years, then you will get. Baba mariye to bal batiye.
Okay, you're saying
immediate relief.
All right.
Where is the immediate relief?
All right, where is the immediate relief? Milind Deora, the fact is, look, we can sit here and argue whether this is political or not. Let's be honest, it is political as before the elections. We all know that. So that's not really the debate. The debate really is, or the question really is this going to help the BJP? And is the Congress and those of you here representing opposition parties, are you worried, Milind Deora? Because what the government has said is that at least as far as this farm income support is concerned, they're going to ensure that by March, the first tranche of 2,000 rupees starts to hit 12 crore beneficiaries, 12 crore households. Are you now worried that with this budget, the government has recovered some of the lost ground with the farmers, with the middle class?
Srinivas, give me a couple of minutes to respond, please. I've been listening to all the other panelists. Firstly, look, as I said, we are proud of the fact that we are clocking high growth rates, but we all know there's jobless growth in our economy. There's a massive flight of capital. Talk to any entrepreneur, talk to any MSME. There is tax terrorism. There is fear of doing business. I live in Mumbai city. I meet a cross section of businessmen, traders, industrialists. I've never seen a situation and an environment where businessmen are even afraid to have conversations on a mobile phone. They're using end-to-end encrypted services like WhatsApp and FaceTime to have normal conversations. Everyone feels that the government is snooping on them. Everyone feels I want to become an NRI, live overseas. And these are not people who are absconders or people who need to run away from
No, but Milind, in answer to my question.
what's happening in the agrarian area is clear that there's distress. My political point, to answer your question, which is a political question, if the government, and I agree with the earlier panelists, I believe it was my friend Mr. Mohammad Salim, I believe that this government is ignoring and in denial about the severe problem of unemployment, the severe problem of agrarian distress in our economy. And I believe, based on my private conversations with many of my friends in the BJP, that what they intend to do politically going into the elections is to sidestep the economy. Today we are all debating the economy and the budget because the budget was presented. Tomorrow, Srinivas, on your own debate, you will be talking about something else. And if they are so confident that the economy is so strong and it's done so well in the last 5 years, why then are they trying to fight an election on Mandir versus Masjid?
That's fine. I'm saying,
to use the bogey of
help them,
political stability
but
in the elections?
But won't this help them? Won't today's announcements help them recover?
I don't believe it will
some
help
of the
them.
lost ground with farmers and the middle class.
I've seen many schemes. Listen to me, just because you say farmers 30 times in your budget speech and you say defense 40 times in your budget speech doesn't mean that you're actually alleviating problems on the ground. I've seen enough budgets, regardless of which party, including my own, where there is an intent by the government perhaps and the government spells that out in a budget speech. That doesn't mean it translates to actual deliverables on the ground. So I believe that ultimately they know that the economy is not their strong point. They know that they had a windfall, they had massive tailwinds with low oil prices, and they blew it, and they blew it with schemes like ill-conceived plans like demonetization and other policy announcements. And therefore, I believe that in the nth hour, at the fag end of their 5-year term, rather than going to the people with development and the economy as a strong election point, they're deviating from there and talking about Ram Mandir, talking about political stability, talking about strong leadership. All of these kind of distractions to actually sidestep from the economy.
Let me just get a quick comment from Ajay V. Jhakar, because we also are joined by a very special guest. We've got Dr. Amit Mitra, the Finance Minister of West Bengal, with us. Ajay V. Jhakar, quick comment. You don't think this is going to at least try to mitigate some of the damage, some of the sort of hostility in the rural sector?
I'll tell you how people will think in rural areas. Those who get the money are going to think it's not enough. And most of those who are excluded will not forgive the government. That's the practical knowledge. But
then you're saying you can never win. I mean, there's nothing you can ever do to.
And because of last 4 years of false promises and slogans, people just discredit any statement that the government gives just because the government has given it in the first place.
Right. Okay, Dr. Amit Mitra, let me just come straight to you now. I don't know if you had a chance to hear Arun Jaitley, who seems to have recovered and sort of gave a fairly vigorous interview from New York. But he says that this is a sort of a game-changing budget. They've done this big 75,000 crore handout. There are tax cuts for the middle class, and that this is really, he didn't say that, come out and say it outright, but this is then going to give them a big boost going into the elections.
First of all, I wish all the best for Arunji, who I have known for many years. But he obviously, this is a sinking ship. This is a swan song.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead, Dr. Mitra. Dr. Amit Mitra, can you hear me? Dr. Amit Mitra? Okay, Dr. Amit Mitra, we'll just get you back in just a second, but Deshrathan Nigam, respond to what he's saying till we get him back. Sinking ship, swan song. This is the last gasp.
I think this ship is moving very fast. Its nautical miles are very high. And whatever the others say, these are, nobody, I've seen Shashi Tharoor speaking today, everybody agreed this is a very good step. None of them said it's a bad step, one. Secondly, they were debating whether they could have done better or not.
Okay. So, all right. Chandan, can I go back to your own finance minister, because we've just got him back. But I'll come back to you.
I'll just say something which I'm sure he will be elaborating better.
Yes.
Now, see, many of the schemes that have been coming today are copycat schemes. And that's why when we talk about how it will benefit, I think in many states it will not benefit at all, because many of these
schemes already exist,
such as in West Bengal,
yeah,
where there is a Krishak Bandhu,
right,
in Telangana, there is Rayat Bandhu.
Okay.
There are so many schemes are already working.
Okay, fine.
What is the additional benefit from this?
Okay, sorry, Amit Mitra, we have you back now. You were saying that this is a sinking ship and a swan song. Why do you think so?
Yes. I think all the elections of recent times you see have shown that they have lost most elections. Now they have shaken every established institution, the latest being the National Statistical Commission, which said that the unemployment rate has the 45 years highest 6.1%. Now, what happens when you keep saying things which are just false? I'll give you an example. Banks are in good health, said the budget. Non-performing assets was 2 lakh crores in 2014. Today it is over 10 lakh crores. 5 times. And you keep saying the banks are in good health. Now, GST, everybody knows, I said many times on your channel as well, that there will be hawala, there will be black money. Now they've started only this week arresting people for that, which means GST has collapsed in terms of its validity.
Right.
As far as demonetization concerned, the whole world is now saying. So in every sector, every economic policy, either you have lies, falsehoods, manipulation of data,
right,
which has never happened in India before.
Right.
And finally, of course, comes this sop to the agricultural sector. As somebody on your panel I overheard saying, West Bengal has done it already. Yes. Telangana has done it. We have done a much better job. It's 1 acre. 5,000 rupees, actually. And small guys, marginal farmers.
Yeah.
Okay, so now my point is that this is a last ditch effort before a sinking. You try to hitch on to some weeds and some straw. This is not possible. The die has been cast.
But Dr. Mitra,
the
can I
common
ask
people, the informal sector, the SMEs all know that this is all bluff. They have not benefited. They have been hammered through demonetization and GST.
Okay, Dr. Mitra, let me ask you.
Please go ahead.
Let me ask you what the finance minister said, and let's unpackage some of the things you said on jobs. This is what he said. He said it's absurd to suggest that an economy that is growing at over 7% real GDP, about 11% nominal GDP, is not creating jobs. Number one. Number two, he says, is evidence that jobs are being created, there is no unrest on the streets. If there was no job creation, he said there'd be unrest on the streets. Do you buy either of these arguments?
He has to believe his own National Statistics Commission chairman, who has resigned, the acting chairman, giving the 6.1% unemployment rate highest. Doesn't he know that? Let me also submit to you, what he's not telling you is the fine print. Swachh Bharat, everybody drum beating.
Yes.
Do you know that its allocation has come down, Srinivasti, by 24%? Umbrella scheme on SC, scheduled caste, by 29%. These guys are listening. They will learn about it very quickly.
Right.
Other vulnerable groups by 20%. Manrega.
Right.
Manrega suddenly became a big thing for them, which was started by others. Manrega has not increased, negative 1.79%.
Right.
Milk revolution. Large number of people are milk, world's largest milk producer.
But I'm
down by 12%.
But I want
industry, but down by 2.60%. He doesn't know that because sitting in New York, he's not reading the fine print.
No, I just want to ask you. I want to ask you one thing, though. I know everyone wants to jump in. Just give me 1 second, Dr. Mitra. Because you're an economist, I want to press you on his point about the fact that his argument that if you're growing at over 7%. You have to be creating sizable jobs. Is that a valid argument to make as a from the economic point of view, or is that
the simple answer to yes? You see how the economists would look at it is how many people are joining the labor force in search of jobs. Now, he not being an economist, perhaps he doesn't know this. How many people are joining the labor force for a year? How many of them are looking for jobs? This is the data that the National Commission of Statistics went into.
Right.
And what did they find? They found that people are even going away from the job market. Can you believe that? Because they're depressed.
Right.
They're not finding any jobs. So his data requires to be matched with those joining the labor force in a country, then look at the unemployment rate. Of course, growth produces jobs. Is it enough?
Okay.
The answer is no. 6.1% unemployment.
Is not leading. Okay, Amit Mitra, stay with us. Stay with us. The other panelists want to jump in. Can I quickly get Deshratan Nigam to respond, and then yes, Deshratan Nigam.
You know, 2 years back the EPFO law was changed. When the employee, if he used to resign, he would not, he would have to open a new account again, EPFO account. Now this law has been changed. A person who resigns has to carry his own previous account number. So the 2 crore number which has been given today in the budget about EPFO is a new job creation one. So these are new accounts. Please remember that.
This is not evidence of new job creation. This is evidence of perhaps greater formalization. The two things necessarily don't add up.
Yeah. See, the fact remains, because of the law change, I am saying earlier you could have been right when the law was not changed. Now let me come to the other issues. When somebody says that from 36% people were looking for the jobs earlier, now 32% people are looking. There was the data that had come. You know, because of the Mudra scheme, you're not looking for the job. It's a self-employment creation. Why should people look for a job when they can create entrepreneurship at the lowest level? So 13.4 crore Mudra loans are there. Even if I reject 1/3 of it, which is a very high rate of rejection, you've got to come to some kind of a figure.
On Mudra, listen. On if we get into Mudra, we'll be here all evening because we've done a lot of work on Mudra.
That is at the lowest level of entrepreneurship. Let me tell you, with 50,000 rupees.
Okay.
One second, Mr.
One second. Since he's brought up Mudra, can I just say a few things on Mudra?
I want to contradict something Mr. Jaitley said. He said that if there were no jobs, people would be on the streets. But you have to understand that in the last 5 years, there have been more farmer agitations in the country than there have been in the last 20 years put together. And the government promised 2 crore jobs. Rather than getting 2 crore jobs, we have the highest inflation. 1 second. We have the highest inflation in 45 years. What happened after demonetization is people from the villages had to go back. From the cities had to go back to the villages, and when they went to the villages, they took the jobs of the women, and it has led to defeminization of agriculture as a consequence.
Okay. We also have one thing. No, let me rotate the strike.
Give me 10 seconds.
Let me rotate the strike.
Just 10 seconds. You know, in last 70 years, there was no formal system was placed to know how many job creation or employment creation is being done. So this time, the government is trying to put in place a system. There is no formal system of knowing, let me tell you, of knowing the number of job creation in last 70 years. It is a established
fact. No, it's the reverse. We have reports which are being buried by the government.
No. That's not the true picture. You don't take care of self-entrepreneurship. You don't take care of other informal jobs that are being created. So you got to.
The NSSO counts informal. It counts the informal sector.
CII is on record. CII is on record saying that we need a system in place.
Okay, all right. Manish Tiwari is joining us from the Congress. Mukesh Bhutani is here as well. Welcoming you to the panel.
Allow me.
Yes.
I want to just make one comment because I've got to go.
Oh, I see. Sorry. Yes.
There is one element that has not been.
Go ahead.
Not been
Dr.
spoken
Mitra.
about.
Yes.
This is 59 minutes. As a small entrepreneur, you apply, and within 59 minutes, you'll get a loan. This is the biggest scam that is going to break in the future. I heard the acting finance minister mention this scheme. That's why I'm telling you. There's a company which was nominated by these people, by the government, which is a company started in 2015 with 38,000 rupees loss in 2016.
Yes.
Now they have violated all laws. Now when you get a loan, 1,000 rupees of fee goes to this company, 0.35% of the loan, and they claim that 23,000 crores have been lent, goes to this company. Who are these people? I would request you in your specific program where you find out the truth, look at this Capita World, who they are, and this is being mentioned in the budget.
Right.
This is a part of the big scam that is going to happen in the future. Please dig it up.
Okay.
And this is typical of this government.
Okay.
59 minutes, you'll get a loan automatically through the computer.
Okay. All right. Actually.
So this is the kind of budget that has been presented.
Okay. Actually, there's been quite a bit of work that's been done on Capita World and their financial bona fides, but there's always scope to look more. Do stay with us if you can, Dr. Mitra. but I understand also if you need to go, because I quickly need to go to the other panelists. Manish Tiwari, you know, the thing is that...
Allow me to go, please. I will only, just give me just 2 seconds. What I am suggesting to your original question.
Yes.
The time, it is too late in the day.
Okay.
The die has been cast.
Right.
The common people at the grassroots have understood that this government has to go.
Right.
And therefore, they're clutching at straws. Let me say, it will not work. 100 times somebody tapped on the desk, I'm told, according to one of the channels. I only feel sorry for the piece of wood that took 100 beatings. But it will not help.
Okay, somebody was actually keeping count of the beatings. I didn't know. Thanks very much indeed, Dr. Mitra. Manish Tiwari,
Yes.
strong criticism from the Congress on the job creation front. But again, the question lies, Manish Tiwari, that were you to come to power, or whatever formation comes to power, is going to inherit this serious jobs problem. And I've been saying this earlier today as well, we've not heard concrete, credible solutions from you as well as to how you'll fix it.
Well, Srinivasan, at the moment, what we are focused upon is the complete and absolute and abysmal non-performance of this government. And notwithstanding all the platitudes that we've heard about entrepreneurship, the fact remains that a confident government does not go and virtually abolish the National Statistical Organization if you had some credible employment figures to your credit. Insofar as solutions to this great mess in the economy which has been created, which spans across the agrarian space to the urban space, you will find that in the Congress manifesto, which is now under preparation, there would be concrete solutions to some of these
why
issues.
Not share, at least give us some idea of what you have in mind on jobs.
So therefore, you know, you saw one particular formulation with regard to the universal basic income, you know, being articulated.
Yes.
The rest would be articulated in the course of the next month and a half.
But Manish, you know, if you're holding them guilty of making kind of knee-jerk pre-election promises, then couldn't the same argument be made about you and your promise of that universal basic income?
Well, the
knee-jerk, pre-budget, desperation.
Well, the fact is that neither is it knee-jerk, nor is it pre-budget, and nor is it really in competition with these people, because if you
it was pre-budget, 4 days
in the sense, first of all, that's another argument whether this government had the moral, constitutional and political right to actually present a budget for 365 days when the financial year starts on the 1st of April 2019,
right.
And after that this government only has 56 days to go. So that's another argument.
You don't think that they had the right to do it?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. You know, in the sense, this should have been a vote on account, but rather than that, you heard the grandstanding and you've had many announcements being made. The fact is, whatever new government comes into office is going to present a budget for the remaining 9 months. And to answer your very specific question as to how this great economic morass, you know, which has now come to perpetuate itself over the last 55 months is going to be cleaned out.
Yes.
Let me just go back to what the UPA had done. You know, we put in place not only the most ambitious rights-based programs, some of which, you know, they had critiqued, you know, all the way into the 2014 campaign, Manrega being the poster child of their criticism, and went in increased allocation on Manrega every time. So if we were able to fund the Food Security Act, right, which was a lakh 13,000 crores, if I remember through the top of my head, for us to fund the universal basic income is not going to be a problem. So therefore, we are going to walk the talk.
Walk the talk. Okay, we'll have to wait and see if you do. But let's just go across to Jay Panda, who's joining us on the show. Thanks for joining us, Jay. Sorry to keep you waiting. Do you believe, as we just heard Dr. Amit Mitra say, that this is the last gasp of a government that is about to lose power and that this budget will not help? Or do you think that this budget may have in fact helped them somewhat take back the narrative?
Well, first of all, I think it's quite clear that this is a budget which is meant for an election year, and it stands in contrast to the previous 3 or 4 budgets that this government has put out. Now, previously the budgets were fiscally conservative, and you saw a steady decline of the fiscal deficit, which is very good for inflation, and therefore you saw inflation also dropping despite the fluctuations in petroleum prices and so on. Now, for the first time, you've seen that they've dropped all conservatism and stepped out of the crease and gone completely all out. For example, to raise the middle class income tax slab from 2.5 lakhs, one would have expected that a typical election year budget would have seen it go up to 3 lakhs or 3.5 lakhs. But to double it, to go straight to 5 lakhs, is a very clear indication of intent that they are serious about taking on these elections, and any chatter or narrative that the past few months had seen the ruling party on the defensive is what they want to tackle.
Do you think it'll help them, Jay?
I think the initial reactions are that they're getting I think the initial reactions are positive. You've seen the markets have responded positively because they were bracing for even worse. I've seen some buzz among the middle class, and although some people are making light of the farmers' subsidy, the income subsidy for farmers, because it's 6,000 rupees, let me tell you, I spend 12 to 14 days every month, month in, month out in rural India, especially in my constituency in Odisha. And I can tell you 500 rupees matters a lot to marginal farmers. There are already schemes, for instance, for 300 rupees pension for 60-year-olds and 500 rupees pension for 80-year-old citizens. And I can tell you that it makes a huge difference to their lives. So I suspect that this will help the ruling party rather than not.
Okay. Chandan Mehta, I mean, one can't discount the fact that you could say it's political, you could say it's cynical, you could say it's populist, but now they at least have something to take to the people.
No, it is populist and it is political. All budgets in that sense are political, particularly pre-election budgets.
Sure.
So to that extent, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with the government having a clear target, which are the sections to appease, and they've gone about it.
Sure, but Amit Mitra seems to feel it's not going to help them at all.
Yeah, I also
Jay Panda says that's perhaps too extreme an analysis.
Yeah, Jay is now disgruntled with his own party, so I can understand.
No, you particularly, sir, would understand what being disgruntled means.
No, I was disgruntled and I cut my umbilical cord. So that's a different matter. My position is different from Jay.
Well, let's see.
What I was trying to say is that in this scenario, you see, whether it will benefit or not, finally the voter will judge. But if the glib talking economists and the economic advisors of the government believe that this will be a bonanza for them in terms of votes, I don't think so. Because as I said earlier, many states already have such schemes, and what is being given is really peanuts
compared to the overall the overall sort of extent of the crisis.
But this is in addition to all those that they are getting. This is in addition to all those which is getting. Therefore, it's some kind of a cushion which it gives to them.
It's a cushion. Like you're also promising a cushion. They're also promising a cushion.
You know, the thing is, Srinivasan, everything or certain schemes or certain initiatives actually become the defining headline of a budget. Right, so therefore they become the poster child of what the government is promising.
Yes.
And what has come out of this budget is that the minimum income support you are promising to the farmers is 17 rupees a day.
Yes.
It's a joke. You know, it is actually insulting the sensitivity and the sensibilities of Indian farmers and totally and absolutely mocking the extent of the agrarian crisis in the country.
But Jay Panda says even 500 rupees a month counts for farmers, and he says he spent time out in the field.
He's right, 500 rupees a month may count. But the fact is that 500 rupees a month when reduced to 17 rupees a day actually does not count. And let's not also forget, all that the farmers are going to get is not 6,000 rupees. All they will get during the lifetime of this government is possibly the first tranche of 2,000 rupees, even if you have the list of beneficiaries in place and ultimately it goes through, because once the code of conduct kicks in, then you get into a different reality at all, and you're actually 40 days away from the code of conduct.
I know, but then regardless of who comes to power next, suppose it is you coming to power, you will have to carry this forward.
Or well, we may actually do much better. We actually may do much better. That's exactly what I'm saying.
You may do much better.
So therefore,
are you saying you'll sort of increase this?
So therefore, that's exactly the point I was making earlier. That the new government is going to present a budget for 9 months. They are going to have a trajectory for the next 4 years.
Right.
So all this, what has been presented, will be relooked at. Certain things will be modified, certain things will be dropped, certain things would be enhanced. So therefore, there would be a new economic outlook completely.
So
with under those circumstances,
with the assumption that there's a change of guard, which we don't know if that's going to happen or not.
Let me correct Manish Tiwari 1 second. It's not 17 rupees a day. It's 3 rupees 28 paisa per person per family per day per person.
Of course.
And
break
also,
it down, it comes
I am happy to be corrected.
Yeah. And also, I think after
Mr. Rahul Gandhi.
After 5 years, as a farmer, I think 80% of those sitting in parliament are not going to get re-elected, irrespective of which party they are from. And I think it's good riddance to all of them.
My God, that's a big prediction, 80%. Mr. Putani, sorry, we've not had a chance to hear from you at all. On the tax front, you think that this is a concrete positive step, which is also going to, have popular support?
I'm just reflecting on Jay's statement on the tax, the 2,50,000 to 5 lakh, in my view, is tokenism, because it translates into 900 to 1,000 rupees a month, depending on whether you're a senior citizen or an ordinary citizen. So it's actually a rebate. It's not that you're taking away people who are earning between 2.5 to 5 lakh rupees. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
The second aspect on tax, there's really nothing on tax, because there are only 2 pages devoted to what is called Part B of the budget.
Sure.
And of which 1.5 pages deals with the real estate sector,
right.
Which is extension of tax holidays to low-cost housing by 1 year, because the sunset clause was approaching March 31, 2019.
Right.
The second is that there's a long-standing demand of the real estate developers that they should not be taxed on notional rent for the unused inventory of the houses.
Okay.
So there's a benefit given that as well. And then there is benefit given to individuals by way of, second residential house capital
It's also
gains.
a vote on account, so at least perhaps on this part of it, they've decided to kind of be a little more prudent.
That's right.
But interesting that you're not very impressed with this big tax cut, which everyone was, been talking about as a kind of a, big.
There is a rationale, it's taken years for us to achieve the taxpayer base that we have. And I think, to take away this exemption from 2,50,000 to 5 lakhs would mean that suddenly you'll have a couple of crores of taxpayers missing from the tax net. So it didn't make any sense. But I think what's worrying is the trend on tax collections that has been projected. So, for example, if you just look at personal tax, this year, because of the trend, you will achieve a growth of 23%. On that, there's an estimate of 17% increase. So that's like a 2-year increase of 44% on personal tax, 33% on corporate tax. So this is how the math on the fiscal deficit is adding up. And I'm circumspect about how these targets would be achieved, because large taxpayers are reeling under pressure insofar as tax collections are concerned, because there is one thing to say that taxpayers pay voluntarily, the other thing is what the tax
turning the screws
demand.
So that's there's a lot of that.
A lakh crore down in terms of GST collections.
Right.
So therefore, if you're a lakh crore down in terms of GST collections in your projections, this obviously means that the economy is not performing, because otherwise, you would have had an increase in GST collections in the budget estimates and not the other way around.
Jay Panda, can I just ask you?
From industry days to fill in the gap.
Just wait. Jay Panda, can I just ask you on the point about the fact that, Manish Tiwari, several others have also made this point, that was this really, in terms of propriety, in terms of precedence, the right thing to do, that it's really a vote on account that you should have passed, but what you ended up doing is virtually a full budget, and you've actually lobbed a huge, almost fiscal grenade into the lap of whoever comes next, this next government, is going to inherit this 75,000 crore payout plus much else.
You know, I notice a contradiction in this, on this particular point that is being discussed.
Okay.
Some people are saying that the government has gone whole hog and given a budget for the whole year and committed very large resources which it shouldn't have. It should have been a vote on account. On the other hand, they are saying it's not enough, it's peanuts. So you can't have it both ways. So if it is in fact a full budget, which it seems to be, the constitutional issue, I suppose they must have examined it thoroughly, and there is still time because the election has not yet been notified. Anybody that feels that this is unconstitutional, I believe they still have an opportunity to go to court. But I would suspect the government has thoroughly planned it out. Now, let me address one other important aspect. You know, it is clearly a populist budget, and I believe I am seeing signals that it is getting some traction, irrespective of the analysis that some of the other panelists have made. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have consequences. So, with a lot of effort, the fiscal deficit had come down to 3.3% and inflation had been controlled. But what this means is that whether this has positive effects for the election, for the government during the election or not, 6 to 12 months down the road, there will be a price to pay because it will lead to higher inflation.
Right.
It will lead to currency devaluation. That's what a rise in fiscal deficit does, pure and simple. But that reckoning is left for another day.
Okay.
But I do believe that as far as the benefits, short-term benefits of populism, they are beginning to get traction.
Okay. Quick response from Manish Tiwari before I take a break. You have the option of going to court if you want to challenge the constitutionality of this budget. You're a lawyer. Are you going to go to court?
Look, not that the doctrine of separation of powers is, very much respected any longer in this country. But I do not think, with great respect to Jay, that the budget, whether it is interim or a vote on account, can really be challenged in a court of law. So, because, ultimately this is something which falls to the legislative domain. And, Jay is correct to the extent that maybe the Constitution is silent on whether a government can present 6 full budgets in its 5-year term, but propriety, tradition and convention has always necessitated that in the final year, in the run-up to the elections, no government actually goes around presenting a full budget which ties its successor government.
But this is not whole hog.
Okay.
This is still
This is not whole hog, 75,000 crores. Okay, take a, but I wonder then what a whole hog budget is. Take a short break.
After the elections.
All right, okay. We'll take a short break and hopefully we'll have a chance to ask the finance minister after a break because Vikram Chandra is sitting down with Piyush Goyal. Welcome back. We have a very lively panel going on during the break. Sometimes I wish we could put that part of it on. It would be very interesting indeed. But Mr. Bhutani, tell me, big picture, some of these questions raised by some of our panelists about the concern that this is this kind of completely unchecked populism now. You've abandoned, in a sense, the image or the perception of a government that was pro-reform and in a sense, pro-big business. You've gone very much, in a sense, down the Congress road. And what is that going to mean for the economy? What is that going to mean for us being able to control our fiscal deficit?
See, if you read the budget document, leaving aside the debate whether it's interim, general,
vote on
account,
yes, absolutely.
Part A of the budget document always has been all about sloganeering and announcements of policies and allocation of funds for various social schemes.
Right.
And part 2 is really the amendments. So there is really nothing in part 2. Right. So one can argue it that if there is nothing in part 2, there are no amendments that have been moved, then the budget document, which is a finance bill read with the constitutional provisions, is fine, because all the Constitution says is silent about, as Manish rightly said, whether a government can present a 6th budget or not. It merely talks about how the government is going to meet the expenditure.
Yeah.
Obviously, if the government has to meet expenditure, it has to raise revenues.
Yeah.
And hence, even when it comes to change in slab rates or tax rates, I think Mr. Goyal has very intelligently not touched that. He's offered a rebate instead. So I don't think that there is any form of impropriety insofar as the budget document is concerned.
Yeah,
now,
not so much impropriety, but just in terms of fiscal management.
Yes.
That can India at this stage afford such big populist handouts?
Well, that's
given, as you said, that the tax collection is not looking very healthy.
Well, tax collection, so let's focus on part one of the budget. I think part one of the budget has nothing insofar as business is concerned, which is really the growth engine. And when I say business is a growth engine, I don't mean to ignore the other segments of the economy like agriculture. Understandably, all of it is in distress. Barring mention of the insolvency and bankruptcy code and the banking and financial reforms, 2 paragraphs have been devoted, there is nothing. So, medium and large businesses are wondering what is in it for them and how is the economy going to propel growth. And then a large part of the budget is devoted to all the social schemes. Now, what is worrying factor is how this fiscal deficit math is adding up.
That was my question, yes.
So, well, there are 2 ways to look at it. One is we will cross the bridge when and if we reach there. The second is that what kind of legacy are you leaving behind? So, I think there's a big bet insofar as the tax collections are concerned. GST tax collections have been projected at 18%, direct tax for individuals almost 20% and corporate tax 17%. If that bet doesn't pay off, then you're looking at a fairly precarious situation insofar as the fiscal deficit is concerned. Now, I think that the government is also, not looking at just the fiscal deficit, it's looking at other parameters such as, current account deficit, the GDP to debt ratio, so on and so forth. And it's also taking advantage of the leeway that has been given insofar as the range-bound fiscal deficit is concerned.
Ajay Jakar, I mean, at a political level, because you're also a politician, this interesting Congressization of the BJP when it comes to economic policy, on one hand you have the Congress which is in a sense trying to out-Hindu the BJP, and then you have the BJP which is trying to out-Congress the Congress on the economic front. I mean, this could have been a Congress budget.
I think so. There is no ideological difference between political parties as far as the economy is concerned. All political parties, especially Piyush Goyal ji was very truthful in saying today that the big achievement of this government has been to control inflation. But the point to be taken is that not only this government, past governments, especially this government, has taken more, has contained inflation at the cost of the farming community, and that's what's led to the farm distress in the first place. And we are also at a risk not only of policy failure, India is at a risk not only of policy failure, but of also political success of populist measures. And that obviously is a major problem we have to see. Now, just one more thing. On this issue of 75,000 crore SOP, or where is this money going to come from? I think so that's not the right question. When you look at the 7th Pay Commission, payout of annual pay increase of government employees is 1,30,000 crores per year. Where's that money coming from? Nobody asks a question of where that money coming from. But at the end of this, 75,000 crores that's going to go to the farmers will act as a rural economic stimulus. There's no doubt about it.
Deshratna Nigam, I mean, that this could have been a Congress budget? And this is a party or the government that we thought would be very reform friendly, versus whether very business friendly. Complete turnaround. Increasing outlay to Narega, promising income benefit transfers to farmers. No,
these are reform based. Look at how the market responded today to the entire
cash
measures.
handouts to farmers is reform based?
Yeah, obviously. See, what is happening today
how is it reformist?
Let me tell you, it is giving income to the farmers which are going to be invested for farm sector, which in turn will boost economy. So this is how, that's a change. That is what Mr. Jaitley was also referring.
That's not reform though. Okay, let me just go across to Yashwant Sinha, joining us, former finance minister. Thank you very much indeed, sir, for joining us. Look, number of aspects of this budget to unpack with you. Let me just start by asking you something that the finance minister said in an interview. This is Mr. Jaitley now we're talking about, who seems to have had a health recovery. He gave an interview in New York. And when he was asked this question about jobs, he said, and the fact that there seems to be a problem with job creation, he said that, look, an economy growing at over 7%, actual GDP, 11% nominal GDP, it's absurd to suggest is not creating jobs. Is that an acceptable argument?
You know, before I answer this question, let me tell you that it is not Yashwant Sinha who is saying that we are losing jobs or employment opportunities. It is government's own agencies which are saying that there have been job losses, and the government is suppressing that data, and the government is saying, no, look at EPFO, look at this, that and the other, and jobs are going up. Now, as far as Mr. Jaitley's argument is concerned, who is today not finance minister but minister without portfolio, that the economy actually is not growing at over 7%. This is where the government is manipulating figures, like it is trying to manipulate figures of job losses and job employment generation. So, the point is that the economy has been badly affected on account of a number of factors, and it is not growing at 7%. Look at the way they have revised the GDP growth figures for the demonetization year of 16-17. They have revised the last year's figures again. I mean, how is this all happening? Because the National Statistical Commission has become non-existent. Who is clearing these figures? So, the whole point is that the government's statistics are not credible anymore. And therefore, this argument that an economy growing at 7% will be creating jobs.
You may, all right. So you may question the government's numbers, but the fact is that having put out a budget like this, promising an income handout to farmers, promising tax cuts to the middle class, do you think that's going to help the BJP seize back some of the narrative, particularly from these aggrieved constituencies?
Let me tell you one thing from my long personal experience of public life, both as a bureaucrat as well as a politician, and that is that these are such last minute sops or gimmicks do not impress the voters. They see through it. They know that this is being done to purchase their votes, and therefore they will not be impressed. They will continue to think as they thought before all this, and they will take their own decisions. I think we are underestimating the maturity of the Indian voter, who has demonstrated this maturity time and again.
But the fact that, you know, even if the first round of the first tranche of the income support to farmers starts hitting bank accounts, I mean, it's not a very big amount, 2,000 rupees, but it's still something which the government could, you know, try to leverage to its advantage?
No. It is a very clumsy attempt to buy the votes of the farmers. There is no doubt about it. But the point I am making is that the farmer is not going to be satisfied with this kind of a handout. What the farmer wants and needs is a whole host of measures accompanied with a cash or support scheme or income support scheme. This in isolation is not going to improve the lot of the farmer.
But Mr. Sinha, how do you read overall the political signaling of this budget? Because just before you joined us, we were talking about how when it comes now to the economic side of it, it almost seems to be the Congressification of the BJP. This is very much a kind of big state, SOPs, handouts, cash transfer kind of budget, and it seems to be that the sort of the economic direction that the BJP is taking. So, is that a, I mean, obviously there could be motivations, political motivations behind it, but you see that needle having shifted over the past 4.5, 5 years?
You see, the Congress party did it for the sake of votes. Look at their 2014 interim budget. Did it help the Congress party? So, similarly, this government is hoping against hope that these handouts will win some votes for it. But as I am repeatedly telling you, this kind of last minute SOPs do not help. They do not impress the voter. He
I
will no doubt take this 2,000 rupees.
No, I was asking.
But he will not vote BJP.
No, I was asking a different question. I was saying, do you see that when it comes to the economy, do you see the BJP's, the sort of ideological needle tilting leftwards, tilting towards a kind of Congress style, populist, handout, big state, cash transfer kind of economic vision?
On the strength of this interim budget,
yes,
one can say that they have moved in that direction. The needle has swung.
But do you think that, I mean, how do you see that? Because, the BJP, being an ideological party, you were part of it for so many years, was always seen as being somewhat more rigid. But the fact that they are willing to be flexible, they're willing to perhaps move away from an economic direction they would have preferred, more in this direction, do you see that as something that is, a sign of flexibility, of political agility, or do you think that it's a kind of realization that perhaps, look, when it comes to fighting elections, we really have to go down that route?
I think it's the latter. It's a clever ploy to impress the voters in an election year in an interim budget by an interim finance minister. But, I will not take it as a permanent kind of swing in the BJP's ideology. I think it's entirely because elections are imminent.
Okay. And Mr. Sinha, what do you make of the concerns that some have raised about the fact that, I mean, number one, given that this was an interim budget, should announcements have been made which are essentially 1 year, they're annual commitments, and secondly, it places a huge fiscal burden on, whatever government was to come next, that you have this 75,000 crore, income support to farmers and several others. So how will you manage to maintain fiscal discipline?
In the last few days, if not few weeks, I have been crying hoarse that the government does not have the right to present anything more than an interim budget, which will be the vote on account as far as expenditure is concerned. But this government has gone ahead and presented almost a full budget. And this is extremely improper. This is highly unconstitutional. It breaks the tradition which has been established in Parliament and the conventions of the Constitution over the last 70 years. But then one is not surprised because this is how this government has been behaving.
And is this going to be a big fiscal headache for whoever comes next?
I don't know. I mean, some of these handouts will cause a fiscal burden. I think the 75,000 crore rupees annually is also an under calculation. Like in all other things, this government has been underfunded this also perhaps, but it will depend entirely on the new government which comes into office after the elections. I mean, maybe they will even improve upon this in some other way and do something on the fiscal side to ensure that the gap is made up.
Mr. Sinha, before I let you go, I must ask you a much more directly political question, because, regardless of whether this budget helps this government or not, I don't know if you've been following a recent spate of opinion polls that we've had over the past couple of weeks. Most of them seem to be suggesting, and this is before the budget, mind you, that while the NDA, the BJP are losing ground, they still are comfortably placed to form the next government. They're all sort of putting them somewhere in the 220, 230, 240 mark. I'm talking here about NDA. Are you convinced by those polls? And do you feel that, of course, you've said this is not going to give them any additional momentum, but are you at least convinced by the general trend of these polls?
No, I am not. I mean, I have seen these polls. They are not. They are saying that the BJP, including the NDA, will be far short of majority, and there is no way they will be able to fill that gap. On the other hand, the parties which are in opposition today would clearly have a majority. They will quickly come together after elections, elect their leader, and form the government. That's how I look at the forthcoming situation after the elections.
And are we talking to a potential finance minister of that new Gathbandhan, were that eventuality to arise?
Prime Minister.
I am nowhere in the picture.
Or even Prime Minister?
Let's treat it as a joke.
Okay. All right. Pragmatic as always. Thanks very much indeed, Yashwant Sinha. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll let you go. We're just still waiting to get the finance minister on in just a second. Desh Ratan Nigam is dying to jump in. Jump in.
You know, the difference, benefits were given in the past also. And if I look at the difference, earlier the benefits could not reach because of the lack of direct benefit transfer on account of lack of banking accounts. The only difference, if you look at it, is the platform that has been created by Jan Dhan accounts. So that delivery will take place. Earlier they were given, there was immense amount of leakage that it could not reach people.
Hold on. Under Narega, millions and millions of no-frills bank accounts were created and payments were remitted directly into them.
I'm
so
telling
actually,
you, there was huge amount of leakage in Manrega. Huge amount of leakage.
The leakage was between the bank and the beneficiary. But the money going into the bank, there was no leakage. So whatever scheme, whatever has replaced.
It used to go to the contractors, and then the contractors used to further pay. So that was the difference. That was the difference.
So corruption, you're conflating two different things. Corruption in Narega continues even to date. Jan Dhan doesn't solve that. The problem is the last mile from the bank to the beneficiary. That's where the corruption takes place, and no one really has been able to fully crack that.
That is what I am saying. If it goes directly into your account, you only have the access to your account and you get the money.
Unfortunately, in India, and Ajay Veer Jakar will tell you this.
I think that's a wrong presentation. That's a wrong presentation.
It's not wrong presentation, it's a fact. Banks and beneficiaries are at a distance. That's why you have banking correspondents who are supposed to take the money to
Let's come back to the budget. Let's come back to the budget.
Just 10 seconds. Please remember the amount of Jan Dhan accounts that have been opened. The reach of the bank that has increased. They were not there earlier. 34.4 crores bank accounts which have been opened under Jan Dhan account. Clearly tells you that the direct benefit transfer will reach people.
No, again you're making a mistake because you're conflating two separate things. Having more bank accounts doesn't necessarily mean the banking footprint is increasing. If you actually look at the footprint of commercial banks, cooperative banks, those are shrinking. Banks are increasingly pulling out from rural areas. The number of accounts is increasing doesn't mean that necessarily means that people are getting closer to formalized banking. That's why they still are dependent on money lenders.
Let me just tell you one second. Those accounts have been opened.
Accounts have been opened
for the farmers as well.
Yes.
So the money will go into that account.
Yes.
So
if you work into modalities,
that was happening earlier as well. Sorry,
no, not 34.4 crores new accounts were opened. Please remember that.
I think let's come back to the budget.
Yeah.
And when you look at, is the budget visionary? I don't think so. The budget is visionary, and I'll just give you an example. 65% of the children who are in primary schools are going to be born today will be looking for jobs that don't exist today.
Okay.
And 50% of the jobs that people have today can technically be replaced by technology. So what is the budget doing to address this issue, not only of creating jobs but creating?
What should they have done?
They should have allocated a lot more money for education. And that they have not done. I think so the allocation for education has gone down. But
we'll have to check that.
Yes, you can check that.
We'll
check
that.
A lot of people supporting the government have actually said that farm loan waivers were bad. But UP did it, BJP ruled state. Rajasthan did it, UP BJP ruled state. Maharashtra did it, BJP ruled state. And so it's all politics at the end of it.
Karnataka, Punjab.
No, so the Congress is not denying that farm loan waivers are bad. It's the BJP which is denying farm loan waivers are bad, and their own governments have done it. So this also must be taken into account. And there are few other things in the budget that we must look at. So there was an announcement for Rashtriya Kamdhenu Ayog for genetic improvement of cows. But you know, when you go to the villages, people are not bothered about genetic improvement of cows. They're bothered about cows eating their crops in the land, and they're chasing them away from the land. So farmers actually hope for subsidy on fencing the lands out because of the politics of the cow.
Right.
You know, these are things that people making the budget in Delhi don't understand what the ground reality on the ground is.
Right.
And that's why they might have a disconnect.
Right. We also have Sajid Chinoy joining us from Mumbai. Sorry, Sajid, we're not even able to come to you earlier. One view here in the panel, Ajay V. Jakar says this is not a visionary budget. Do you think this is a visionary budget?
Well, I think there are constraints here in an election year with an interim budget. I think that to be fair, the policymakers faced many constraints going in today. GST collections are at 20% below what was budgeted. A lot of calls for a farm loan package. Bond markets were a little bit antsy, so you could not slip from your fiscal deficit targets. So there were multiple constraints. I think given those constraints, this is a pretty good balance. You've had some slippage, but not too much. And I think, frankly, the farm loan, I mean, the cash transfers are much more targeted and less expansive than some had feared. Some had feared 1% of GDP and above. But I think, we're in a way missing the forest for the trees, because India's fiscal problem is a little bit bigger and different. The centre's deficit is only 3.3 or 3.4. What we don't realize is there's a lot of off-balance sheet borrowing the last couple of years from entities like Food Corporation of India. 1.3% last year, 1% this year. So if you add up the centre, add up FCI, add up states and public sector enterprises, total what we call public sector borrowing requirements are above 8.5% of GDP last year and this year. That's a very hefty amount. I think whichever government comes in next from July will have to address that larger issue, that we can't be living with such bloated fiscal deficit, public sector borrowing requirements going forward. That's the bigger challenge here.
Right, but how would you have expected, or what would you have hoped should have been said or done today to address that?
Well, I think maybe some of the tax. I mean, if there was a kind of a more certain way of paying for these new commitments. If you look at what's been promised today, the cash transfers are about 0.4% of GDP. The tax rebates are 0.1%. So where do we get that 0.5% of GDP? Ideally, what we want, Srinivasan, is for those cash transfers to replace existing welfare programs which are much more leaky and distort market prices. Or we need other forms of revenue. We need a far more aggressive strategic disinvestment plan.
Right.
Instead, what we've gotten actually on the revenue side is pretty ambitious assumptions for next year, both on GST collections as well as on personal income taxes. So again, these could all be revised in the July budget, but what I think markets would like to see is a little bit more certainty on those revenues coming through next year, so that 8-9 months from now, markets aren't again getting worried that you've got unfunded liabilities on your book.
Right. In fact, we probably are just about to be able to go across to Vikram Chandra with the finance minister any minute now. So we'll perhaps might have a little more clarity on some of those points you raised, especially on the question of whether now these income support and income transfer schemes, both the ones that are promised by the Congress as well as the BJP, are going to replace existing subsidies. But just while we wait for that, Sajid, if I have time, just a quick comment from you, especially, you represent JP Morgan. What is, because this entire concern over data and the fact that the government is not putting out its own data, there seems to be a question mark on the credibility of, or rather the independence of our statistical and data gathering bodies. Is that a matter of concern?
Well, on the whole, I think our data has been very good over the years, and frankly, there has been this disconnect between the GDP data and the high-frequency data ever since we moved to this new system 4 or 5 years ago, which is a methodological upgrade of this value added. So right. I think that's been a puzzle all along.
Right.
My sense is, that on the employment data, let's focus on how we create jobs rather than trying to figure out what the unemployment rate is, because we just don't have enough data to calibrate that very finely.
Sajid. All right, Sajid, I'm just going to cut in there for a second and go straight across to Vikram Chandra, who's with Piyush Goyal.
Right, it's a great pleasure to have with us the Finance Minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, who's had a rather triumphant day in Parliament. I don't remember the last time when a budget speech was interrupted by people pounding on tables and saying Modi, Modi. And I think I ended by calling it the Santa Claus budget. And why it's a Santa Claus is because there were lots of things that you gave, but sometimes there's good with the bad. Here there was nothing really, no taxes were hiked, nothing was taken away from anybody, which of course has led to people sitting and scratching their heads and saying, where's the money, where's the money for all of this going to come from? Is it going to be from buoyancy or from where?
Well, first of all, let me clarify that this government, over the last 5 years, has consistently reduced taxes. Mr. Jaitley increased the basic exemption limit from 2 to 2.5 lakhs. Then he gave a rebate up to 3 lakhs. Increased the investments limit from 1 to 1.5 lakh. Increased the interest on housing limit from 1.5 to 2 lakhs. Brought in standard deduction. So I think this government has consistently kept giving some concession, some benefit or the other. So there's nothing unique about this budget. All these 5 years we have consistently been delivering to various sections of society, particularly the marginalized, particularly the deprived sections of society, the poor, the farmers, the neo-middle class, the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, OBCs. It has been a pattern of 5 years. Prime Minister Modi has consistently focused on development, good governance, and ensured that the right of the nation's resources, which rightfully is first of the poorest of the poor, has been respected. I mean, after all, which government ever imagined that they could give 10 crore toilets to our sisters and mothers so that no woman ever has to have the ignominy of not being able to go to a toilet from sunrise to sunset? Which government ever thought that they could take electricity to every home in the country? Which government ever planned that our women and sisters and mothers don't have to cook on diesel, on kerosene or on coal? Which government decided that they will give 6 crore, now 8 crore free gas connections? Whoever thought 50 crore people should be given free health care? So Prime Minister Modi has been a compassionate leader whose first focus has been, let me give a better quality of life, let me give ease of living to my people.
So when you were preparing this budget, and of course you also had to step into it at a fairly late stage with the ill health of Mr. Arun Jaitley, was it something which you kept in your mind that, look, this is the interim budget, elections are coming and I should take care of some of that also? So, you know, there are issues, there have been problems in areas like in the farm sector, problems with the middle class, so I should do something about it. Because at the end of the day, a big package for farmers, package for the middle class.
Well, I must say that the vision behind the budget is clearly Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi's. I had the advantage of being continuously guided by Shri Arun Jaitley ji. So both my leaders were involved, were the persons who were guiding the whole process. And I think Prime Minister Modi has always been a person with a very clear vision and a clear mind. When he had embarked on this journey 5 years ago, he had set the ground rules very straight for all his ministers. He said whatever work is in public interest, whatever needs to be done in national interest shall be done now and not wait for an opportune time necessarily. I think elections have come and gone. We've had so many elections. We've never looked at elections and made policy. I had in fact once in some media interaction also mentioned that before one state election there was a decision which could have cost us heavily, badly in the election. Almost all of us in the cabinet pleaded that let us postpone this for a few months so we can do it after some time. Prime Minister said that is not how good governments work. If a thing is good and it needs to be done, now is the time to do it. So for us, even while preparing the interim budget, now it's not that we said next year ki koi chinta nahi hai. Don't bother about next year. Kuch bhi ho, next year dekh lenge. Everything that we have said and done, we have provided for next year also. Wherever we feel we may need more provisioning will be done in the final budget that comes in. But nothing has been kept open-ended. So even now we have provided 75,000 crores next year. Current year also we have provided 20,000 crore for the PM Kisan Yojana. I think this is one government that has shown fiscal prudence like never before in this country.
And the fiscal deficit is still at 3.4%, right? So you've provided 75,000 crores there. You provided 18,500 crore rupees for the income tax exemption. No new taxes visibly that we can see.
Not visibly at all.
At all. So I mean, sometimes you worry about fine print, but a lot of time has gone by now.
No, I can assure you absolutely nothing.
So despite all of that, it's still 3.4% the fiscal deficit. So the reason for that, I assume, is that the GDP is growing, and as a result, the base is higher, and also, you're expecting a certain amount of buoyancy.
And this nation is moving towards an honest economy. More and more people are finding the virtue of paying their taxes. And I think today I acknowledged with folded hands and very grateful acknowledgement to all the taxpayers in this country who even after this huge change will continue to pay taxes and help us with the resources required. And I'm sure, Vikram, when you pay your tax and you know that there is a leader like Mr. Modi who will ensure that every rupee goes for the right cause, will be used and spent efficiently and honestly, you don't mind paying some tax out of your income. You don't mind that your money goes to provide electricity to a poor man's home or to give a toilet to a lady. I think the problem about corruption, the problem about leakages, about which a former Congress Prime Minister had almost acknowledged that for every rupee that he sends, 85% is stolen, middlemen take it away, goes in corruption. We have not tolerated that. We have planned our governance from day one in such a fashion that every rupee that you pay out of honest taxes is going to be spent for the welfare of the people of India. And that is why today taxpayers are taking the fact that they are supporting the government, supporting India progress with their taxes in the true spirit that it is meant for.
And that also almost leads me to one of the big ideas in the budget, which of course is what you're doing with the farmers, the direct transfer. And I just want to come to whether that's going to be a systematic change that in thinking. But when you were talking about taxpayers who are paying their money and the need to reward them, one of the reform measures that was there in the budget is you seem to be saying, look, we're going to try and clean up the enforcement of taxation, remove discretion, remove direct interface between tax officials and taxpayers, to make sure that if somebody is paying their taxes, they shouldn't be harassed because they're a taxpayer.
Absolutely. And that is...
And has that been happening, to your view? I mean, that what we used to call tax terrorism is still happening.
Frankly, it is a set of people who have been publicizing this. A set of people who are possibly have some clinks in their past which are coming to fore or which are coming home to roost. Now, I think either they should have come clean. We gave an amnesty opportunity also. We gave everybody an opportunity to come clean on their assets, on their old incomes. If unfortunately they did not use that window, and now all of that data is emerging from the shell companies that we have deregistered, from the data that is collected from all over the country after demonetization, and the data is being mined to find out who had that large stack of cash. Now all of this is helping us enforce the law of the land. Now, would you rather that we don't enforce the law of the land?
No, you certainly
would you rather that we allow people to, tax evaders to get away?
But your message seems to be that if you're an honest taxpayer and you're paying your tax, you will not be harassed.
Well, look at our track record. This year, I'm sure you must have all got your income tax returns sitting at home. We processed them electronically and they were automatically generated and dispatched either to your account or if your RTGS number was not there, through a pay order to your address. 99.54% of all income tax returns through a computer process, algorithm, not human interface, have been accepted as they were filed. Now, can you imagine in India, have you ever heard that 99.54% of all returns, including business returns, being accepted as it is, the refund, if any, payable being paid, and life moving on? And those few who come under scrutiny are also through that algorithm, where it decides if they see an abnormal movement of income, profit, loss, cash deposit in the bank account. Such abnormalities, obviously, the tax department should scrutinize. I think very often we hear an exaggerated version. The tax department has tried to be as less intimidating as is possible. But going forward, we are further strengthening the process, and 2 years from now, there's going to be complete anonymity between the taxpayer and the assessing officer. They will not know each other. They will not know the names or address of anybody. The computer will act like a black box. And
so you can't ask for a bribe, in other words. There can be no corruption, there can be no way of...
Well, this government has not allowed anybody to ask for a bribe.
But that possibility will not exist.
It'll be completely eliminated.
Okay, you spoke about leakages. Now, as I was saying, one of the big ideas in this is the direct transfer to farmers that you've got. Now, it has been criticized. You've had the opposition saying it's only 6,000 rupees, it should have been much more than that, which I guess ties up with the resource question. But is this a conceptual shift that we are thinking? You've done this in this budget. We heard Rahul Gandhi talking about it a few days ago, talking about minimum income. Are we moving now to a scenario where instead of the subsidy, which is the way we have normally taken care of the poorest of the poor, now it will be by direct cash transfers?
Well, I think this is not at all intended to be a subsidy. We are actually only giving a respect to our farmers who have provided us food security, who have been really the annadatas of this nation. Food production has gone up, food productivity has improved. Today we have surplus of almost all our commodities, and therefore prices have been generally quite low. We are now planning a massive thrust to food processing, to storage chains, for logistics, for export of processed products. And I think we are looking at sustainable solutions for the farmers' welfare in the long run. This initial support of 6,000 rupees every year is basically just a mark of respect that this nation is paying to its farmers.
Is there also a recognition that that's one of the areas where we as a nation perhaps have failed the farmers? For various policies that have been done for a long period of time, there is agrarian distress in large parts of the country which has not been fully satisfied.
Well, I think over the years with land holding getting divided and subdivided, the land owning pattern has changed. We have very small farmers. The number of small and marginal farmers with land holding below 5 acres has gone up significantly. And in this situation, obviously productivity and incomes will take a hit as families get bigger and they divide the land holding. We are seeing that this is an area of concern, and clearly what this government has done in 5 years, whether it is MSP for all the 22 products that are produced, whether it is 1.5 times minimum MSP upon the investment or the cost of production, so you have a 50% over the cost of production price, whether it is the increased procurement under MSP, whether it is giving 100% reimbursement in the event of any loss due to natural calamity, whether it is giving them soil health cards, whether it's giving them information about what products are most eminently suitable for their land, and I can go on and on. We have consistently looked at how to make them both self-reliant as well as have sustainable agricultural incomes, not just doles, not just one-off benefit, but truly something which will last a lifetime.
So that structural change you're saying is something that is required and which has to be done. So
which is being done for the last 5 years.
And that's the reason, and you think that a loan waiver would be the wrong way to go because...
Well, loan waivers have never made them...
Question.
No, I'm not looking at that. Should it become very necessary in a particular instance? It should also be done. It has been done in the past. But look at what happened in the UPA regime. They gave a loan waiver of 70,000 crores in 2008. They didn't provide a single rupee for that in the budget. In the 2009 budget, nothing was provided. And what did they do? Out of 70, they only gave a waiver to 52,000 crore rupees of loans. It went to about 3.5 crore farmers, which means at an average, the farmers got only some 14,000 rupees or so in that year. Other than that, in 10 years, what did they do for the farmers? Whereas we have a track record of so many things. And now, let's take our next 10 years, we would have given 7.5 lakh crore rupees to the farmers. Isn't that far more sustaining? Isn't that far more beneficial to the farmers? Isn't that something which will help them to create the availability of adequate seed, maybe fertilizer, maybe pay their electricity bills at the right time before each of the harvests? So we are looking at long-term solutions.
Well, I know you had a long day and I'm going to allow you to go, but just one last question, which is on the constant debate that is around jobs and unemployment. We've again heard the last few days, have been having this entire discussion on what the data is. Is it a crisis? Is it one of the worst periods in 45 years when it comes to jobs? What is your thought process on that? And was that something which was in your mind when you were doing the budget also?
When you read that there was 2% unemployment in this country, you believed that?
in general, I tend to look at all data with some suspicious.
You've heard.
I look at all data with
suspicion.
You've heard of
2% unemployment in this country for so many years, 2%, 3%. It's a question of complete change in the way this country is working. This country works on different people working in different areas across the length and breadth of the country. Small businessmen, people, self-employed people, carpenters, masons, people engaged in the construction industry. There's so many multifarious dimensions of work in this country that the data could never imagine the sudden formalization that has happened in the last 2 years. And that formalization post-demo is possibly not yet being properly understood or captured. The NSSO comes out with data once in 5 years, which is too long a period. The world is changing so fast now. Nature of jobs worldwide are changing. You yourself are coming out with apps which are going to transform news reading or news, the industry of giving news totally. So I think in this changing era, where newer and newer technologies are taking center stage, this government is trying to skill our people in this new age. It's trying to bring in data analytics, modern technologies for manufacturing, artificial intelligence. We have a vision which is very futuristic. And our youngsters are really doing us proud with the kind of startups, the new unicorns that we are proud of in India.
So that's why you think the unemployment problem will eventually be solved more than...
I think what they are doing is to try and assess what the real situation is, assess the impact of formalization, validate that data with quarterly numbers, and I'm sure they'll come out with their data. But I respect data. I respect the good work that the CSO is doing. I'm sure they'll come up with more realistic data rather than data which was showing numbers which will look very good. But I don't think anybody in this room would ever believe that.
So you think there's a problem perhaps with the numbers?
I think we will wait for the more validated data to come out.
Right.
And in any case, can you imagine such growth? Being the world's fastest growing large economy consistently for so many years, having more growth in 5 years at an average than any other government since independence. Is that possible without work, jobs, new employment opportunities? It's possibly just something which is well recognized, that growth is the only way to take the people out of poverty and progress their lives.
All right, Piyush Goyal, I know you have to go now. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Thank you.
All right, Piyush Goyal there. I'm going to quickly open it up to debate because that interview was scheduled earlier. It sort of came in just now, so we're a little short on time. Yogendra Yadav joining us, Lalita Kumaramangalam joining us of the BJP. Yogendra Yadav, let me just come straight across to you and to get from you, I hope you had a chance to listen to the substance of the Piyush Goyal interview. To his point, let's just start off with his last point, that the government is growing at a rapid pace, so it's absurd to suggest that jobs are not being created.
Economy. I'm surprised. If a minister who has had no education benefits had said it, I would have said, all right, these ministers don't know these things. But Mr. Piyush Goyal has had some advantage of formal education.
Right.
He's probably not heard the word called jobless growth. This is a phenomenon known all over the world, that economy grows but fails to generate employment. It's the name of a very serious disease. And this is a disease which was not discovered yesterday by NSSO. This was formally acknowledged by the Prime Minister of India, who happened to be a professional economist, Dr. Manmohan Singh. He had said, we have had jobless growth. 7 years later, for Mr. Piyush Goyal not to know that such a phenomena exists, that this disease may afflict India, it's a dangerous thing. It's astonishing and it's dangerous. I'm surprised that someone who's in charge of economy of this country doesn't understand such an elementary thing. How do I expect him to solve a problem if he doesn't even recognize that such a disease exists? If someone says cancer doesn't exist, one South African president had said AIDS doesn't exist. How do I expect him to solve AIDS if he doesn't even know that something like AIDS exists? I'm stunned, I'm surprised, I'm very disappointed.
And on farmers, Yogendra? On farmers, when he says that, look, we are giving this income.
Issue, I think the one good thing,
yeah, we are giving the income. It's part of a wider bouquet of benefits that we provided farmers.
The one good thing that has happened is that formally the government of India has acknowledged that farmers' income needs some direct support. That's a positive, but that's about the only positive thing I can say, because the amount that they have thrown at the farmers is meager, it's laughable. 6,000 rupees a year translates into 3 rupees and 30 paisa per person per day if it were to be a 5-member family, or if you get into more serious stuff, it translates into 600 rupees per crop support for per acre, which is nothing. So it's not even a supplement. I do understand that this is not income, it's only income supplement.
Right.
But even as income supplement, it's a joke. Number 2, it excludes all the sharecroppers, it excludes all the tenant farmers, and therefore it doesn't work. And I'm deeply surprised, saddened, that it is being now applied with retrospective effect from December onwards. The only intent to my mind can be to dodge the model code of conduct and somehow reach 2,000 rupees to the potential voters, which doesn't sound very nice to me.
Okay. Lalita Kumar Mangalam, you know, it's fair enough. You want to do a political budget at the end of the government's life. You go ahead with your political budget, but is this really principled? That essentially you are handing a 20,000 crore cash gift to voters, hoping to win their vote.
First of all, I am highly obliged to both you gentlemen for your kindness in understanding how dumb we are compared to the two of you. But let me say that every government that has faced elections and every government since independence has presented
by the way,
budgets.
Not my view, that was Yogendra's view.
Perhaps their interim budgets were not as detailed as ours was today, but all right, okay, so I'll leave you out of it. Let me just address that to Yogendraji. But every government has faced this accusation from people who have, on the other side, who have been wanting to defeat that government and come into power. Now, this is a democracy. You can't ever satisfy the opposition, especially when you're presenting a fairly detailed interim budget as we have today. For the last 5-6 months, we've been hearing that the Modi government is a suit boot ka sarkar, has not addressed the needs of the poorer and less advantaged, more disadvantaged sections of society. And finally, when we come out with a budget which addresses 3 of the sectors that you all have mentioned and one that you haven't, which is reality, then not reality, sorry, the construction sector. Then we are told that we are presenting a budget that is opportunistic, that is asking for votes, etc. Vasu, quite frankly, all of us who are going to stand for election, every single party across the board is going to ask for votes. And why is it wrong if the government in power says that yes, we have accepted that there are certain things that need to be adjusted, and we are doing our best to address the demands of the populations who feel neglected.
At the last
minute, is that a crime?
At the
Secondly,
last moment,
in terms of what you're saying
Kumar
about morality,
at the
whose
last
morality
moment,
are we talking about? There is nothing unconstitutional in this. Yes, we have perhaps not stuck to the norm, but the norm does not always have to be correct, and it doesn't always also have to be incorrect not to follow the norm. It's as simple as that. While I understand Mr. Yadav's superior understanding of these issues, perhaps I don't know as much as he does, but for me it's a very simple question of us having accepted that yes, there are some discontented people in the economy who are not as advantaged as perhaps many of us, and their needs should also be addressed.
Okay. Salman Soz,
nobody is saying that we've offered perfect solutions. But we have made rather good beginnings. And managed to keep our fiscal prudence.
Salman Soz, so what? They're coming in at the last minute, but they're still trying to fix the problem. Why is the Congress upset?
No, I mean, you know, I don't really expect the BJP to uphold any principles. So I have no such expectations. If anybody of you had such expectations, you know, I'm sorry, because you would always be kind of disappointed. The real issue here is the following, Srinivasan. That in 2014 and 2015, we had 2 years of success, 2 successive years of drought. In 2016, economy was recovering, and then Mr. Modi came with his crazy demonetization idea. That was a surgical strike. That was actually a carpet bombing of the economy.
Right.
And then you had 2017 with GST, small businesses, and the entire economy is suffering. After creating so much distress and creating so much suffering, at the fag end of its journey, the Modi government says, okay, you know what? We'll give you 3.3 rupees per family member, as Mr. Yogendra Yadav tweeted, per month.
Yeah.
And now you should be happy. You should be grateful. You should vote for us. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen because farmers cannot be fooled all the time now. I mean, this is enough. I think there's enough insult. This is a slap in the face, and I think the farmers of this country are going to slap this government down.
Okay, let's see if that happens or not. I'm sorry, because we're running short on time. I'm just going to have time for very quick comments from everybody here. Ashish Bharadwaj, Dean, Jindal School of Finance. Quick comment from you on what you have. I mean, clearly a sort of political, populist budget. Is it going to work?
I mean, it's. I'm not sure if it's going to work, but I know the minister talked about artificial intelligence, which is great, but the real intelligence would have been to talk about, in my opinion, universities and higher education, which are the true drivers of change in all ways. The word, for example, the word university did not even feature once, but cow came up multiple times. And you know, we know the statistics. We have, you know, more than 200 million students, and not talking about higher education is a big disappointment.
Okay.
I think I disagree with Salman Soz when he says you can't fool farmers all the time. I think so farmers are going to be fooled all the time, irrespective of which political party it is. Okay. And normally after elections, the feeling that farmers get, in words of Tom Perkin, are, after the battle was won, they found that the horse ate as usual, too much hay, and crapped all over the landscape. Now the only issue is that farmers feel this even before the elections have been announced.
Okay.
I just wanted to add a quick comment to what the finance minister referred to, the automation project.
Yeah.
So this is the central processing center, which was approved, you know, version 1, version 2 by the cabinet 15 days back, and fairly significant allocation of 6,000 crores just to make sure that there is faster accuracy and outcomes for taxpayers, and virtually a faceless you know, assessment procedure. I think this is a game changer. In the long term, it's going to really, you know, act as an enabler.
Okay, all right. That's an interesting little nugget about the budget which got left out. I really wish we could go on, but I'm very, very sorry. We're completely out of time. Thank you all so much for joining us. That's it, but do stay on. Much more coming up on NDTV.